Hey, Canucks fans, Merry Christmas. I'm a man who likes to give, and today I'm going to give you a very, very worthy guest. This interview is going to come out on Christmas Eve. I'm in the spirit of giving, and we thank Chris Faber for giving some of his time. Hello, Chris. How are you?
I'm doing awesome, man. It's been a fun day today of putting out Canucks content, so I'm happy to put the nightcap on it here with you.
That's awesome. You are cranking, and we're going to get to a lot of the things you're cranking on. I'm cranking. I'm actually editing my music video with Marie right now. So it's exciting, and it's fun when two good looking content creators can get together and chat for half an hour or so.
Absolutely excited for the video, and I'm almost more than I am excited for this chat, to be honest.
That's what most people say anyway, so that's fine. So, Chris, tell everyone, give broad, big view. Tell everyone all the different things that you're involved in right now, and then we're going to talk about each one. But what are some of the things you're involved in, big picture, right now?
Yeah, so we got the podcast with Canucks Conversation, or Canucks Convo for short, with my co-host David Quadrelli, who's a mutual friend of both of ours. Pretty good dude in general. And aside from that, I've been writing, yeah, been writing at Canucks Army for just about 2 years now. So I do all my writings there. And then most recently now, just been hired by Sportsnet 650 to work the board and do some producing as well, which will actually just finish my final training date for that today. So next week they throw me out to the Sharks and see if I can swim. It's going to be a lot of fun because, yeah, I've learned a lot so far in the first couple of weeks there. So that's basically all I got going on Canucks wise. Aside from that, just like to hang out, and I like to take naps. I'll put that in there. That's one of the things I'm busy with.
Well, that's why we get along so well. I think that's well, I love what you said there between the podcast, the writing, and then the producing. It's kind of like three different types of skill sets. Obviously, the ability to speak and to navigate and facilitate as part of your podcast, the ability to write and edit, obviously, and then the ability to kind of do stuff behind the scenes. All good. No, I'm always impressed by everything you're doing. And we're going to talk about you getting up at 4 a.m. to watch crazy games overseas. But we'll go in order. I have so much to ask you about. I know people on this channel, I've talked about you a lot on this channel because I do have a very healthy respect for you. Most importantly, as a person, but everything you're doing for and with the Canucks, it's pretty awesome. So let's talk about Sportsnet 650 first. How did this come about, and where might this fit into your career aspirations, whatever they may be?
Yeah, it fits right into them perfectly, actually. Just getting my foot in the door into radio is kind of something that I wanted to do with, I guess I should have mentioned, I'm also a full-time student at BCIT.
Wow.
So yeah, I'm in the radio arts and entertainment program there.
Awesome.
So this little bit of a break right now. It's pretty great. But yeah, the idea was to get into that school so that I could work in radio one day and, host a sports show here in Vancouver. And luckily enough, yeah, Art Factora, who is the one who reached out to me from Sportsnet 650. He knew that I was involved at BCIT doing the radio and arts program, and it was something that we talked about potentially having an internship down the road. And then a couple things happened at 650 with some producers and ops, and they had an opening. So he gave me a shot, gave me an opportunity. I was only one semester into school, so a little bit ahead of schedule on getting an actual job in radio. But aside from that, it's been a lot of fun so far and a good learning experience. It's like your mistakes that you make on air. It's instant, right? Like if you screw up, it's not like you and you can be like, oh, I'll just take a quick edit here. But I know you don't edit your videos, some of them. But you can't do any edits like I normally do with the podcast or anything like that. Yeah. So I've learned a little bit so far. I've screwed up a few times on air, but it's been a lot of fun so far. And yeah, that's the ultimate goal, is to one day host a radio show here in Vancouver. So having my foot in the door over these past couple of weeks has been pretty awesome. It's been a pretty fulfilling feeling, really.
Congrats. Oh, congrats, man. And yeah, I've heard you do guest appearances on both TSN 1040 and Sportsnet 650, right? You've done both of them?
Yep. In the past. No more 1040 hits, though. I'll tell you that.
Yes, no, of course. But I think that I remember I heard you and Quads were on Rob's show a couple times as well, right? Over there. So no, but my point is, you have a perfect, I'm not even gonna say face for radio, you're a good looking guy, but your tenor and your voice, your cadence, all those things. I think you'll be awesome. In fact, I think you're as good as some of the guys doing it right now. And I mean that sincerely. And do you think of TV as well? Or is that really not your thing? You're really focusing on radio?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's hard to focus on radio because as an industry, it's kind of tough to fully invest all of my life into it, right? Because it's like, what is the future of radio, right? So yeah. I think doing the podcast and branching out into other directions is something that I'll definitely keep my eyes open for. I try and stay a little bit, I wouldn't say ahead of the trends, but I'm like recently just following behind them a little bit. So I just, try and keep up with the ever evolving thing that is media around us right now, and just continue to try and put out the best content I can, and whatever way that is, we'll see what happens. But you did mention it. Face for radio seems to fit me a little bit, but we'll see what happens with TV.
Well, I'm the opposite. I'm the one who's vlogging from his car every day, and no one's asking for that. So maybe the perfect medium somewhere in the middle somewhere. No, that is awesome, man. And I wish you luck. Do you already know what show they have you lined up for to start off with?
Yeah, so we're running the morning show next week, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Also the afternoon show, they got me producing that. So it's going to be the first time, trying to bring in guests and stuff, which hasn't really been a problem for me with the podcast in the past.
Yes.
So I'm not worried about that. But that should be just a kind of a fun experience to be able to contribute a little bit more on the show. No hosting or anything yet, but I'm sure that'll come down the road eventually. Like I said, it's awesome to get my foot in the door this early, and I'm just kind of celebrating that.
And if they don't know already, I'm sure the hosts of the actual shows, they'll know very quickly how capable you are. And even if they get you to turn on your mic for a couple, to insert a couple things or your input, I'm sure that's going to happen a lot more often than not. So that's awesome, man. Congrats on that. And let's talk about what's really led to that. And that's your podcast that is growing like crazy. I saw you hint at who might be coming on this weekend. So a lot of cool things, as you said. So tell us a bit about your podcast, how it's grown and how long it's been around.
Oh geez, yeah, it's funny. Actually, we were just recording. I did an interview earlier today, and 2 years ago today, Jason Botchford came on episode 5 of the Canucks Conversation. I remember it because he dropped like one of the first F-bombs on the show ever, because he was talking about a blow up Santa Claus that was effing bouncing around his front yard the whole day in that interview. So that was the first swear word, and I was like, well, I guess this is an explicit show now, so I wasn't gonna what Jason Botchford said on my show. So yeah, that was episode 5, and I guess that started, like I said, in November, I guess around of 2018, and it's really grown from there. Just talked about it with my now co-host David Quadrelli as well. That so I did the first 60 episodes by myself. You were a guest on it multiple times. It was just me talking to normally 2 to 5 random people off of Twitter that I wanted to talk to. But now I've done more episodes with David as a co-host than I've done them on my own. So the show's really kind of evolved into that now. And, Dave and I think, had instant chemistry from the first time we met, the first time we DM'd, the first time that we did a podcast together in person. I think each time our chemistry just kind of kept growing and growing. And from now, it's just the goal, I think, for both of us would be to host together, I think, in radio. And I think that's something that we would both kind of aspire to right now. But for right now, the podcast is just so much fun to put out, whether it's talking to prospects, talking to writers, or talking to guys who do the color commentary for the World Juniors on this upcoming episode this weekend. I just love putting out the podcast, and even if we don't have guests, just shooting it with quads for an hour and putting out some of what I believe is the best Canucks podcast content is just a lot of fun, and it's just been incredible to see the show grow. And we love putting in the work, and just want to keep seeing where it goes from here, kind of thing.
Oh, that's awesome. And I'm a big fan, not just because it's funny. You mentioned that Botchford was number 5. I think I was in episode number 4. So I'm really glad that I set the bar, at a relatively whatever level you want. And then Botch just took it from there. No, but you guys have been really good to me. And I had Quads on here a couple of months ago, and I've told you in person as well that you guys have a really neat chemistry together. And it's not even like one guy plays the funny guy, guy plays the straight guy. I think both of you, your chemistry and your personalities come out loud and clear. And I think that's very important, especially if you're not on video. A podcast is obviously, it's all audio. So, and I know you guys have worked on your chemistry a lot of it's natural, but I know you guys have worked on it as well. Is that fair to say?
Oh yeah, most definitely. I think both of us have learned from each other, I think, quite a bit. I think that I've learned a little bit more on how to be from Dave. I think I've just kind of learned a little bit how to be more direct with certain questions. And I think the funny thing is he might kind of be the opposite. Like he's learned a lot how to loosen up on questions. Like I remember the big one that we did was specifically having both of us interview one person was Tony Gallagher. And Dave comes in with this huge sheet, and he's got questions from top to bottom, and he's reading them directly off the page to him. And I look at him, I don't have anything prepared, because I'm just like, well, like I just try and have a conversation, right? That's kind of the show's called Canucks Conversation. That was kind of the goal from the start of it. And I think he's loosened up a little bit, and I might have tightened up a little bit. So it's been kind of nice to kind of find that balance between us. But yeah, it's it's great. For a podcast, our voices sound very different, which is always good in the audio
Yeah.
format. And we're just, we're becoming great friends away from the podcast and the content that we put out together. So that I think just helps make the show even better. We have a lot of fun just doing non-hockey episodes on our Patreon as well for people that are subscribed to that. So yeah, it's been a ton of fun with Dave. He's one of my best friends over here now in Vancouver because I moved here in January, I guess it was. So
Yeah.
through the pandemic, we've been able to stay friends, and yeah, it's been a good start for us. And I think we're continually just learning off of both of each other because I think we both have a lot of strengths, and I think we both have a few weaknesses as well. So I think working together, we can kind of find those.
That's awesome. And the podcasting market in Vancouver, I always say there's room for every content creator, and I truly believe that. But there's a reason why I do vlogs as well. There's only like 2 or 3 people doing daily Canucks vlogs, and there's a lot of Canucks podcasters, but you guys have definitely risen to the top. Is it? Do you still find it difficult to find guests? Like, do you get rejected 1 out of every 5 times, or is it pretty much now whoever you ask, you're blessed to get on? I.e., some guy whose name rhymes with Trey Barraro.
Well, one of Trey Barraro's workmates, we'll call him Button, we'll just say, he didn't answer quads today. So you do still get, you don't get the answer sometimes, you get denied sometimes.
Yeah.
But it's definitely improved. I think when you can feature other Canucks prospects and you can let them know, like, hey, I've had this guy on and this guy on, or you start to build a relationship with the organization and can work with them for certain things. It makes it a lot easier, but it's definitely taken some time. I mean, landing Clay Emo for episode 4 was a tough one for me at the time. And I mean, like, moving on from there, Jason Botchford and Harmon Dial on episode 4 was huge. And then from there, I think we really gained a lot of listeners that episode. And I just think it's about constantly putting out that episode every single Saturday. We put it out at 5 a.m. so that when you wake up on Saturday, that episode is there. And I think just keeping the consistencies really helped. And I think that's something that's helped us just kind of gain some rep, I guess, around the podcasting community.
I agree with you. The consistency is key. Even if the consistency is once a month or once every 2 weeks or once a week or 2 times a week, as long as it's consistent, because people, whether you're doing podcasts or vlogs, people want to know when to expect your content to come out and build around it. And I think, that's another part of your growth. So that's awesome. Speaking of growth, let's switch gears and talk about Canucks Army. Now, you said you've been writing there for 2 years now.
Yeah, so Ryan Beach brought me on. It's going to be coming up to close to 2 years. I think February will be 2 years.
Awesome.
And the funny thing is, to come full circle, like his original goal was to bring the podcast on. He enjoyed the podcast, and they wanted to kind of get involved with Canucks Army. So that's kind of how it came to. I wasn't the greatest writer. I still don't think I'm the greatest writer, but I think I've learned a lot in that year and 10 months that I've been there. So that's a lot of fun. I love putting my points into articles. I do think that my strength is still just kind of talking it out. Like I've always had that, where I just enjoy having conversations about the Canucks, right? That's something that I just love doing, no matter if it's, at old Canucks Twitter meetups when we used to be able to have some of those, and things around the draft, stuff like that, or even just like even running into you and stuff at Canucks games and sending out a tweet to let people know what section we're going to be in so we can all
that's so funny. Chris, I was going to bring that up actually, is when you talk about you love meeting people and bringing people together. Yeah, one of my fondest memories was, I think it was actually the first time we may have met in person, was as you were in the lower bowl, I was in the upper bowl, and we said, yeah. And you actually said, I'm going to be around in section blah, blah, blah during the first intermission or second intermission. And I came by to say hi, and you had like quite a few people around you. And it wasn't like you were trying to be the hero, the star. You just have a knack for connecting others over similar passions. And in that night, the passion was the Vancouver Canucks, obviously.
Yeah, the bright Trevor Linden yellow jersey helps people spot me pretty easy, and being 6'4", 300 pounds helps that as well. So people kind of just like can't miss me, I guess, when you see me at a Canucks game like that.
I could see you from the other side of the arena down below in your corner seats that night. I will admit that. No, I actually think your writing is really good. I like how, you use stats when you need to, but you also use eye tests, and you have I remember you've done stuff like break down power plays and things like that. I think you have a good knack for that. So I'm going to ask you, it doesn't mean that you're better at one or the other, but which one gives you more fulfillment? And we're not downplaying the other, but is it the podcast right now, or is it the writing, or if it's both, it's both. That's a acceptable answer as well.
Yeah, I think there's definitely some things from each that I love to take away. I mean, I'm so proud of putting out those podcasts that were 5 hours long with 9 guests. I think doing those were incredible, whether it was at the middle of the season or even, you were a part of one as well with the
Yeah.
just after Watchford Pass. I mean, looking at that podcast, that was, I still say to this day, that's the best podcast I think I've ever put together. But even looking at my writing, I think the opportunity that I got to do with the Botchford project and being able to write about Jason Botchford and get quotes from Canucks players and, having a 10-minute, chat one-on-one with Elias Pettersson about why he wanted to shout out Jason Botchford when he received his Calder Trophy. I think
That's
that
right.
there's definitely some things to take away from both, but in the end, I'm pretty proud of the podcast. I mean, that's something that I started, on my own. I remember having, 20, 30 listeners for, all the way up until episode 4 when Clay Emo joined me. So
then went down to 15. Yeah.
yeah. But yeah, I mean, it's been cool because that's kind of one that I started, and it's been fun to see the growth in the writing. But in the end, I love podcasting, and I love kind of just talking my way through the ideas a little bit more. I find sometimes that I need to be in an absolute groove to really put out the writing that I want to get off my brain. And sometimes that groove is kind of hard to find, right? So it's easy to turn on the mic and just, say what I want. It's similar to you putting on your videos. I mean, you can do it from your car. It's really easy to come up with a lot of stuff, but man, when you get a computer in front of you and you're like, you have to type something, it's like sometimes the brain just doesn't want to work with the hands, but the brain always wants to work with the mouth. So that's the easiest thing for me, I think.
Awesome. One more question, then we'll move on to actual hockey stuff. What's going to happen this year? It's kind of unique. You've talked very glowingly about your friendship, your relationship with Quadrelli, which is awesome. But it's a unique, and I asked him about this too. It's kind of a unique situation in that whether you use the term boss or supervisor or the buck stops here on the podcast, it's kind of you and then he's with you, but it's your, you started it. Whereas he's the editor, managing editor of Canucks Army, and you're writing for with him. So that's kind of a unique dynamic as well. I trust that the two never get mixed up.
Yeah, he bullies me at Canucks Army, and I bully him at Canucks Combo.
Okay, just making sure it's equal.
Well, the funny thing is, so I got Dave started into writing at the Canuck Way, which was where I was writing at the time.
Right.
And within, I think, maybe like 3 months, he was my boss there. And then I moved to Canucks Army, and I leave him at the Canuck Way. And then when they needed an editor this summer, Dave is obviously a great pick to be the editor. So he became my boss at 2 different blogs within like a year. So I thought that was kind of funny. So I definitely have to push him around a little bit more on the podcast because that's my zone. That's my space right there.
As you should. That's awesome. One other thing, before we press record, you tell me you've been up since 4 a.m. I know you did a shift at the station, but you're used to early mornings because I won't say I'm going to bed at that time, but sometimes, if I wake up in the middle of the night to take care of the dog, that's what I'm doing. I'll see that you're up watching Podkolzin or Höglander or someone else playing overseas. Why on earth, and how did this start, this love and this desire to start to get to follow the prospects better? And now you become one of the leading, people go to learn about news about our Canucks prospects.
Yeah, no doubt. I always find it funny when, if I send out a tweet sometimes at 1 a.m. and I get a text from Clay at about 2:30, I'm like, what's he still doing up? Like I'm always so confused what you're doing up. So knowing that you're taking the dog out or whatever is some information for me now. I think that one of the things was when Ryan Beach left Canucks Twitter. I mean, he was really the best for it, right? I mean, he was the guy who was putting out all these prospects. He followed Elias Pettersson's career so close when he was in the SHL that he was known as the guy to follow for, prospects gifts. And he left, right? He went to go work for the Vancouver Canucks. And actually we got to play Warzone with him on Call of Duty the other day. So that was kind of fun to catch up with him. But when he left that opened up a door, and I thought that was something that I could help fill. And one of the things that he actually kind of told me this is probably just when I started at Canucks Army. He said, like, whatever you do, if you want to make this like a real career and you want to really invest into it, he's like, put all of your work into it and just swing as hard as you can and try and knock it out of the park. And I've taken that ever since he told me that. I've just taken that to heart. Like, okay, let's watch every single prospect. What else am I doing? I don't really sleep well. I snore so much and so loud that like sometimes it'll even just like wake me up and I'm like, oh, there's probably a Canucks game on right now or something like that. So I'll watch these prospects, and it's been a lot of fun to kind of, learn about them and try and, I wouldn't say educate, but I guess like inform a lot of Canucks Twitter about what these players are up to, and then getting a chance to interview a lot of them because they see like, oh, I saw that you have like 50 videos of me on your Twitter account, or every time you tag me, and I do see it, and I'm like, okay, sorry to be a creepy guy over here in Vancouver, but like we're very into our prospects over here, and I'm blessed to have such a good following on Canucks Twitter because like
Yeah.
they're so invested in everything, right? Like this, it's incredible to see how talking about a seventh round pick is still like a major topic here in Vancouver Canucks Twitter when there's guys that are first round picks for the Anaheim Ducks and scores a goal tonight for USA or whatever at a World
Yeah.
Juniors, and you don't talk about that, right? But Aiden McDonough gets a huge hit in an NCAA game, and it's blowing up on Twitter. So I'm blessed to be in the right market, I guess, for covering prospects like this.
Oh, that's awesome. And I think of your recent interview with Jack Rathbone, so good on your podcast. I thought that was a lot of fun. And so I do want to ask you the two prospects I think you'd agree that everyone's most excited about, not 2021s because we didn't have one in the third round, but of course, Vasily Podkolzin, Niels Hoglander, both could see some sort of action with the team. Maybe Podkolzin's got to wait a year depending on World Championships. But tell us, what's one thing that you're most excited about for each of those two players? We know Podkolzin was our first round draft pick last year. Hoglander was our second round draft pick. So we know they're coming soon. But for you, someone who watches them a lot, tell us one thing that you're most excited about for each of those two guys.
Yeah, and I've talked about this a little bit. I don't know if I've talked about it a ton, to be honest. So I'm excited to do it here on your program. So I think that the thing about Vasily Podkolzin and Hoglander that's so different, but so great for the Vancouver Canucks is the first 2/3 of the ice. That's all Vasily Podkolzin. When he's in his defensive zone, moving the puck from his side up into the neutral zone, into the offensive zone, that first 2/3 of the ice is where Vasily Podkolzin is absolutely going to dominate. And it doesn't sound very flashy, right? It sounds like, oh, he's a defensive guy, but what he's really doing is creating offense from the back end and then moving it up so well. So I think that's what people are going to be very excited for. He's going to be a physical guy who can, fit with a Bo Horvat type of player. I'm just going to be very excited to see what he can do at the NHL level. And then Hoglander, he's that final third of the ice. He's absolutely dynamic in the offensive zone. Something that doesn't really get talked about a lot is his vision and playmaking. I mean, it doesn't take him a second to decide what he's going to do. When that puck hits his stick, he's making the right pass almost every single time. Sometimes ahead of what SHL players that he's been playing with are expecting, and might catch them off guard a little bit. So that's why I really like the idea of Hoglander potentially getting some ice time with an Elias Pettersson down the road, because it just feels like their brains kind of work the same way at creating offense. So I'm excited for him. I'm not sure if this is the year where he absolutely takes off, but making that adjustment to the NHL is going to be part of getting him to be a top 6 player in the NHL. And I think we could see that this year. So I'm excited for both these guys. I think they both have NHL careers ahead of them. And I would bank on Podkolzin being a pretty big impact player in the 21-22 season, because unfortunately the way that it's working with his season and now the shortened season for the NHL, it doesn't look like we're going to get a chance to see him this year, unfortunately.
Right. Well, great breakdown. Thanks, Chris. And yes, I think it's good to temper expectations.
Can I ask you about Hoglander a little bit? Because I know you watched him a little bit, and I saw you on the C4 stream as well talking about it. Did you think that they might start him potentially in the top 6? Like, where do you
no,
about him?
not this year. I see less of him. I definitely see, his crazy, lacrosse attempts and everything. And I know he's got some pretty sweet hands, and I know he's got a good compete level. But I just see too many veterans even in front of him. That's going to make it tough. So in my own vlog today, I talked about that maybe he's a 50-50 taxi squad guy, because I don't think he's going to make the top 14 forwards out. And then he's going to is he the next 2 or 3 guys? I don't know what happens, though, if he does not make even the taxi squad. And if there's no AHL, I guess, does that mean it's back to Sweden for him again?
Yeah. He's going to make the taxi squad. He's going to be on the taxi squad at least going into this season, from a couple of people that I've talked to around the organization and people that see him coming over. I think he said goodbye to Sweden. I think he's staying here. I think the taxi squad really helps him, because he would have been a guy where they had to make a tough decision on him going to the AHL or not in a regular year. But this taxi squad gives him a great opportunity to be around NHL players and coaches, and potentially squeak into a game here or there, or just work his way onto that team right out of training camp. So he's 23 games into his season. A lot of these Canucks players haven't played since they left the bubble, so he's already warmed up and ready to go. There's no rust really for him to shake off. So I don't see him going back to Sweden. I think he's here to stay now in North America.
I love it. Do you give him any shot to make the roster outright?
Yeah, I would say that there's a chance. I think it's going to be interesting to see how Travis Green feels about it, right? Like he's going to be the guy making the final decision on the piece, and I think that Travis Green, the way he coaches, is he really likes that bottom six to be defensively responsible, and that's something that Huglander does a great job of once he's engaged in playing defense. But the thing that he does sometimes, and one of the negatives in his game, is he might float a little bit. You know, when he's in the defensive zone, if he's not engaged where the puck is, if say he's on the other side of the ice, he can get flat-footed and not be moving his feet a little bit. And Travis Green's going to see that and hate that. So I think he's going to have a good showing in training camp because he absolutely was dominant. Every prospect that I talked to that was at the prospects camp that had Niels Huglander mentioned that he was like, you know, head and shoulders above the rest of those guys at that camp, and that includes Jack Rathbone who was there.
Yeah.
So I think that we have a lot to be excited for, and I do think that there's, I wouldn't say 50-50, but I'd say something like 35-65, you know, that he does make the team. So I think he's going to be on that taxi squad, but I'm hoping to get 25 games out of him this year. I think that would be great for the Vancouver Canucks and his development. So we'll see what happens. I think I could be positively surprised after if he plays more than 25 games anyways.
And I love your breakdown of Podkolzin 2/3 of the ice, Hoglander the other third. Man, if they were just like one player, they'd be this Russian Swedish beast. It'd be amazing. All right, let's talk a couple questions about this upcoming season. We're all excited about it. We're hoping that things go well, especially with the North Division. And you know, the North Division doesn't have the high end talent, says the East Division. That division's crazy. Boston, Pittsburgh, Philly, Washington, and Islanders, 5 of the top 12 teams. Whereas 5 of the top Canadian teams were all between 12 and 19 last year, as you know. So, but no bottom feeders, maybe Ottawa, but they're going to be exciting. On the spot, how would you rank? How would you power rank the North Division? I'm not going to make you do all 4 divisions, but just the Canadian one. So, yeah, how would you power rank them right now? And obviously, Canucks will be a part of that, but interesting to see where they fall for you.
Yeah, I mean, whatever team stays the healthiest is gonna come out of this. I know a lot of people are saying Toronto won, and then everyone else is just gonna fall into place after that. I'm not really looking at it in a similar way. I think that now that we've seen the schedule and what it actually looks like, where you're playing a similar team back-to-back nights, I think the Toronto Maple Leafs, some of the reasons why they lose in the playoffs so much is because teams can adjust to them, right? I mean, when you're playing against that type of prolific offense that they have, there is ways to adjust to it when you can find the weaknesses of that team and, you know, get in there, get on their defense and actually put pressure on them because their strength is really their forward group. And, you know, now losing Morgan Riley, that's another, or sorry, not Morgan Riley, Tyson Barrie. That's just another huge loss to that team that, you know, had to kind of have a right shot guy like that. So I think that Toronto, Vancouver, and Calgary are going to be my top 3. To rank them, like I feel like Calgary is up there, then I'd say Toronto, and then Vancouver kind of slots in at 3rd. From there, I'd go Edmonton. No, I'd go Montreal at 4, and then Edmonton 5, Winnipeg 6, and Ottawa 7. Just kind of, but it could really change. It's going to depend on, I think, what the goaltending situation is going to be. I mean, Montreal with Carey Price and Jake Allen, I mean, you know, that's a pretty good duo that they have there. Looking over in Calgary with Markstrom and Rittich, that's a good duo there. Vancouver, obviously, with Thatcher Demko and Braden Holtby. I think that these duos are going to be so important when you're playing this many games in the same city. So I think that's going to be a huge piece. And I think that those 3 teams might kind of shock everyone a little bit more than we kind of expected. So I'm not putting Toronto, you know, with a bullet at number 1, like a lot of people seem to be, just because I think that, you know, playing against them so much, you're going to be able to figure out their game plan a little bit. So yeah, that's kind of my rankings there. I know not a lot of people are going to like to hear that Calgary is number 1 on there, but just think of Markstrom and Tanev, I guess, in that situation. Be happy for them.
Yeah, no, true. And great point about adjusting to Toronto. I never thought about that, but that's true. But yes, you can't argue with their talent, at least on paper, especially in their top 6, top 9 even. And then the bottom, you know, their 4th line of all old slow guys, but that's okay. Actually, we didn't even talk about this, but I have the exact same rankings as you, except I have Toronto, Calgary switch. So I do have Toronto, Calgary, Vancouver, Montreal, Edmonton, Winnipeg, and Ottawa. Winnipeg is my 2nd favorite team. Not sure about their defense. They obviously got good goaltending, good high end talent. And, you know, Edmonton's, you know, obviously they have their 2 awesome players, but I just don't see enough throughout their lineup to, and I know my friends that, some of them that are Edmonton Oilers fans, they kind of rag on me for having them ranked so low. It's so tight. You guys, you know, it was so tight, like 5 points separated all the 5 of the Canadian teams last year. So no, I'm going to go with that. That's awesome. And I want to ask you, And then before we get to our rapid fire at the end, do you think the Canucks are done, Chris, when it comes to roster tweaks, whether it's Michael Furlan's $3.5 million that they availed themselves of? Do you think they're done? Do you think they're ready to go with some young guys into training camp?
I do think that they're done, even if they do get some sort of cap relief because of the LTIR that Furlan, from everything that you hear around the situation, it sounds like he's going to sit on LTIR. I mean, just thinking back to camp, like I remember showing up to the second training camp this year and see Michael Furlan skate around the ice and think like, wow, like this guy could be really impactful for the Vancouver Canucks. And, if he were to stay healthy, he really would. Like nobody that's putting out a lineup, projected lineup right now is putting Michael Furlan on it. But if he were to be healthy, it would be an incredible boost to the Vancouver Canucks. He's a guy who, like we've seen, be able to play in top six roles, be able to be effective in bottom six roles as well. But unfortunately, that battle, it's a tough one. Like I remember watching the AHL game where he, I think it was about 7 minutes into that first period and he had to leave the game. So not a lot of time for him there. So I think that the thing he's got to worry about is just getting himself ready for the rest of life. And if that's something that he's accepted over this break here, then maybe hockey is the next step for him, right? If it's an actual realistic possibility that he can come back and play, that decision must have been made by him already at this point. So I'm interested to see what happens. And if he doesn't return, then, the 3.5 million, I just don't see the Canucks going out and signing anyone right now. Potentially gives them some options to trade within their division because getting a Canadian player is going to be a lot easier or a guy that's playing in Canada than getting a 2-week quarantine out of the States. So, I think that they're done a little bit right now, specifically going into camp. I think they have enough to work with right now going into camp. I'm so excited to see what Brogan Rafferty does, what Olli Juolevi does, what Jack Rathbone does. Talked about Niels Höglander, Jace Howard-Luck. Like there's a lot of guys that we should get a chance to see. And it just feels like there's some options. I said this a lot last year, like looking at what they had in the AHL, there was actual options for guys to come play in the NHL for them. They didn't get a lot of injuries last year, so it was a good thing. But I think with this COVID season, we're going to see a lot of bodies have to be slotted in. And I feel pretty confident about maybe not the depth part of the Canucks lineup, but the depth of the depth feels pretty good, I guess. And maybe that's a good thing going into a COVID season.
I hear you. Wonderful point about Furlan. And I remember, Chris, when he signed just after we traded for JT Miller, people were debating at the time who's going to play with Pettersson. Like they were actually talking about Furlan. And we remember the damage he did to us 5 years ago in the playoffs when he was with Calgary. It's really too bad. Yet, I'll be honest, it's kind of weird. Now, I'm obviously hoping for the best for his health. But a part of me, from a cap standpoint, is almost hoping that he takes another year or two. Like, so it's kind of funny how 2 years ago I was so excited for him, and now obviously I do want the best for his health. But there's no denying that flexibility, even if the Canucks, exactly what you said, don't spend it right away, that's going to be a big bonus to them. But health comes first, obviously. All right, absolutely. I'm gonna wind up. I call it the 5 hole. You know what that means. I have to explain to a couple of non-hockey people what that means, but you know what it means. 5 rapid fire questions. You can answer these as broadly or as narrowly as you want. You can explain life story or just give a one-word answer, whatever you want to do. Chris Faber, what is the sport that you excel at the most playing?
Ooh, that's a great question. So I played 2 sports at pretty high levels. I played in the Canadian Junior Football League for the VI Raiders, who I just took the hoodie off to throw on my Canucks autism hoodie.
Very good.
But football was always pretty easy for me, being my size. But I think baseball had to be the one. I got a scholarship to Jarvis Christian out of high school. Was planning to go down there before I broke my ankle. So that's a school in Southeast Texas. And I got a baseball scholarship out of the BC PBL. I was a big first baseman who could crank the ball and not really do anything else. I was big, and when the ball hit my bat, it was a good thing. So I'd have to say baseball. It was fun getting out to the a batting practice this year at the Nat, kind of just at the start of team. That was a lot of fun. That I haven't been there since we had our baseball championship there, actually. So that was a lot of fun getting back out to the Nat. And I had a couple fun slow pitch games this year. My first swing of slow pitch was a grand slam. So that still got it a little bit.
Yeah, well, I play one of these goofy Monday night leagues, and I'm just thinking that some of those right field fences, that would be like one-handed swing for you. Yeah, okay, that's pretty good. Okay, so baseball for Faber. Number 2, you are starting a team from scratch. Elias Pettersson or Quinn Hughes?
Elias Pettersson, 100% of the time. I just think that Quinn Hughes is an excellent player, but you take the 1C every single time, and I think Elias Pettersson affects the game in a way that you can build around. I know that, like, it's hard to say anything and like not make a nice thing about Quinn Hughes because he does a lot of these similar things, but it's like picking your children. I'm not going to make you do it for a question, but it's a similar thing because both bring so much joy to Canucks fans. But if I'm picking it right now to build my team, like if I'm doing an NHL franchise mode, I'm going to go with Elias Pettersson.
Love it. And you can ask me about my children. I'll give you that. No, I'm just kidding. That's fine. Okay, number 3.
You off air.
You won't offend me either way because I'm half of each. What do you prefer to eat? Japanese food or Chinese food?
Ooh. See, I think I'm going to go with Chinese food just because the Chinese donuts put it over the top for me. My mom shops a lot at the H Mart with her Chinese friend, and she knows like all the inside tricks, right? So she'll grab these Chinese donuts and these long ones that are all twisted up and so crispy on the outside, but like still kind of moist on the inside. Like it's the best donut I think I've ever had.
I love it. And don't let anyone trick you into thinking that those Chinese donuts are called holy. Like whole. Okay. Anyways. Okay. Speaking, that was horrible. Speaking of food, number 4. This guy is paying for dinner, so you don't have to worry about it. All expenses paid. Who would you rather spend a couple hours with? Head coach Travis Green, GM Jim Benning, or owner Francesco Aquilini? Who are you going out to dinner with?
I'd go with Travis Green. We would go to the Boston Pizza up in his hometown. He's got his jersey hanging up there. We went there for a union visit one time, so that was kind of fun. But I would go Travis Green. I think he'd be a lot of fun, and kind of hearing some of these stories on these, you hear podcasts that are by former players and stuff. I know Brent Sopel has kind of mentioned it a couple times. It's you've heard it from some of the guys on TSN 1050 who play with Travis Green. Jeff O'Neill, I think, is one of them. And they've talked about what Travis was like on the road as a player. So maybe you get a couple glasses of wine into him and get some of those stories. I think that would be a lot of fun. But at the same time, Jim Benning has been pretty good every time that I've been able to see him speak or be around him. And I had one conversation with him at the Jason Botchford Memorial Night that media members went to, which I don't know how I got invited to that at the time because I wasn't really a media member. But hearing him talk about Jason was pretty interesting. It was like a different side that you didn't really know about or nobody really heard about, but it was interesting to hear him actually share some thoughts on a guy who obviously had a horrible death, and hearing that was something different. It was a different side of Jim Benning that I don't think a lot of people have seen. So he would be up there too. And then Francesco, it would just have to be, I'm looking for like a $600 meal. So we'll see. That would be the go-to with me and him.
Yeah. Well, you definitely wouldn't be going for Chinese donuts. I'll tell you that much.
Well, maybe after. We'll see how many drinks we have.
Well, speaking of which, not the drinks, but the Travis Green. Are you worried at all about his contract situation?
No, not really. I think the pandemic and the situation around us is making it a little bit difficult, but he's going to be the Vancouver Canucks coach for the next few years. He's done a great job with the young core. If he's able to continually do that with Niels Höglander, Vasily Podkolzin, Cole Lind, these young guys that are coming in, like he's an absolute lock to be one of the better coaches in the NHL. I think he's done a great job, aside from not playing Goldobin with Elias Pettersson, which I'll never let go.
That's fine. And the last question, Chris, and take your time answering this one because it does stump some people. What's one thing that people don't know about you that you don't mind the hundreds that will watch this actually to know about you? What's one thing that people don't know about Chris Faber?
I'm a pretty big softy down, like under everything. Like I'm a big guy with a big beard, but I'm also a pretty soft guy, pretty soft spoken most of the time, unless I get mad or, I really love sports for that reason. I love being able to, I don't have an anger at all, really. I've never thought that putting energy into being angry was a useful thing. So I'm a pretty calm, docile guy, but being on the football field was a lot of fun because I just used to let my brain go insane and hit people as hard as I wanted. It felt so good. So, I think a lot of people look at me like this big, tough guy, but I'm a little bit of a softie down low. I'll say that.
Well, Chris, you are a natural. That is 40 minutes that went by so quickly. So thank you. And I know I can speak for everyone watching, and we appreciate your passion, your enthusiasm, your wisdom, your generosity. And I wish you the best of luck with everything, with the podcast, with Canucks Army, and with your new digs at Sportsnet 650. You deserve it, man. You're the best, and I wish you all the best for sure.
Thanks a lot, Clay. Can I throw two questions back at you, and I'll call it the back at you too. Can I give you that?
Sure.
Okay. I know you're a Pepsi guy, so I wanted to ask, like, is lime the best thing that you can add to Pepsi to make it taste better, or is there something else that you can add to Pepsi?
I've tried it with lime. It's okay, but I keep it pretty plain, quite frankly. Yeah. Do you enjoy Pepsi as well, or are you just asking, or do you?
Oh, I think Pepsi's better than Coca-Cola, and it's kind of my go-to drink. But we have these syrups here at the house, and we have like there's a raspberry one that we have. What do we have? Vanilla, and you just kind of add a little dose of it into a Pepsi. And I'm telling you, if you haven't tried it, I was curious if you had anything. Like I've always had that, Pepsi and Crown Royal and lime's always a good one for me when I'm out drinking. But
yeah, no, okay, pretty plain Jane. Plain Jane when it comes to my Pepsi for sure.
Fair enough. Okay, next question was, and I'm not sure if you're into this, but I am also a huge fan. This could have been the thing that I didn't tell people, but sugary cereals is like my cheat meal sort of thing. It's my favorite thing to get to. Do you have a favorite sugary or kids cereal type of thing?
I do, man. And this is so bad, and it's probably why. Well, I don't eat it now, but I'm surprised I wasn't fatter earlier. Sugar Crisp.
Yes. Underrated.
It's so bad, man. It's so bad.
Very underrated cereal, actually. It never gets brought up. I love asking people what their favorite cereal is, just because, like, I think you can learn a lot about someone from their favorite cereal. But Sugar Crisp is very, very underrated, and it makes the best milk behind a cereal. I really think Sugar Crisp does. Like, people say the Cinnamon Toast Crunch or Nesquik, but that Sugar Crisp milk after, I love that.
I'm with you. So let's when this pandemic ends, let's get together. Chinese donuts, Sugar Crisp, and Pepsi with lime. I think we got a date.
Sounds good. I'll bring the Tums.
Okay. Well, Chris, thanks again, man. I really appreciate your time, and Merry Christmas to you. And I can't wait to see all the wonderful things that are going to come up for you, because you're doing some awesome work.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Clay. Merry Christmas to you, and be excited to have that Canucks Twitter party eventually when the pandemic's over. I hear you're hosting that. So.
All right. Yeah, I just got to clean up a bit, but we'll do it. All right. Thanks a lot, man.
Cheers, Clay.
Okay.